area. Certainly things that we'll be looking to do better is, I know I've been here before on development issues about fire department requirements, so important, the fire lane and the fire access, and I think that certainly is evident when you have these major gatherings of large crowds, is that important access. From an injury perspective, we only had 4 calls for injuries, and there were no serious injuries reported.
Okay, you guys all ready?
Yes.
Here we go. Mr. Savornich.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the council. I would like to thank the chiefs and the captain for being with us here this morning. As I listen to the presentation, I would like to be complimentary of the willingness to come in so quickly to brief the City Council in regards to the incidents that occurred. But I'm finding it a little hard to swallow this morning and a little incredulous that the loss of 2 police vehicles, 2 private vehicles, the damage to many businesses, and mayhem for approximately 3 hours on the streets of Los Angeles after the Lakers' victory can be declared a victory in crowd control. And one of the things to which I watched on television, and I know very well how the media sometimes can keep portraying a incident or incidents over and over in order to fuel spectators watching it at home. As I flipped from channel to channel trying to get a sense of what was happening, I came across the notion that indeed our mission last night was to protect life, not only the life of the innocent bystanders and the public safety personnel that were there, but it seemed to me that the protection of property was taking a second place role when I saw a lot of vandalism and some looting occurring. And while I know it's the premier job of both the fire and the police department to protect life, what concerned me is that the entire nation, and maybe across the world, saw individuals jumping up and down on police cars, setting them afire, destroying a news van, destroying another SUV news van, looting a Winston Tire store, and running amok for approximately 2 hours after the event. So what I would like to hear a little bit from the police department, and then also from the fire department, I also saw a crowd go ahead and encircle some firefighters as they were trying to put out the police car. And so what I'd like to hear from both the fire chief in regards to what level of danger were our firefighters in when they were trying to respond to these incidents, and also from the chiefs and the captain in regards to what was the conscious decision-making process in regards to protecting life versus property, because as I was watching the scene unfold on both Channel 5, Channel 9, and Channel 11, when the perpetrators were indeed jumping up and down on the police cars and running amok, I didn't see any officers present from the wide-angle shots of the cameras. Again, they might have been off camera, but I didn't see any, and I would just like to hear that a little bit.
Nice timing. Your time's up. Go ahead.
Basically, we agreed that the number one priority of the plan was the safety of 30,000 people in and around that facility. There were some conscious decisions made when the police vehicle was set afire, not to send a squad or a small number of officers in the middle of that crowd to endanger them, when in fact, once the fire started, there was little that you can do to eliminate it that quickly. So the decision was made not to move in there. We did not have, at that moment, an overwhelming number of resources at that point of contact. So we made decisions that were dealing with property, and there were no loss of life, and we did not want to escalate it and put more people in jeopardy. Where we had adequate resources, we brought them to bear, we moved the crowd, and also we have to realize is that the small number of people that were dealing in vandalism and law-breaking was not the majority. Most of the people there were trying to celebrate, and trying to distinguish the two was sometimes difficult because they were all intermixed. And so it was our effort not to early on eliminate the celebration. In part of our pre-plan was to give Figueroa as a celebration area, to allow people to stand in the street, celebrate as long as they chose to. But when the crowd began to move in several directions at one time, and then when vehicles began to leave the designated parking areas, and they began to attack those vehicles, that is the first time in which individuals were in jeopardy, and we began to take action on those concerns. On one of the police vehicles that was identified, that car became disabled and was left there because it could not be moved before we could get adequate tow service. People came and torched that vehicle. So the other one, we had an instance where an officer was surrounded, had to basically be rescued, and then moved out of harm's way. And so the whole issue of dealing with all of these circumstances and moving officers in position was always our first priority, was safety for all concerned. And we did not see individual officers running into large numbers of people. We did not see any escalation on the basis of the officers. We saw a very measured approach and organized and decision-making that was in the best interest of all those involved.
Mr. Wax.
Well, two questions, one following up on Mr. Savornich and one regarding the cost. I guess the thing with email now is you get people's responses much more quickly than waiting for the mail to come. And I've gotten quite a few this morning. And let me just read one to you and ask you how you respond. It's from I don't know this person at all, Dr. Harold Kopakin. My wife and I were horrified by the violence we saw following the Laker victory. Television televised a mob destroying 2 cars, one of them a police car, while the police stood by watching and did nothing. What a disgusting, embarrassing scene. How could your officers allow that to continue? That is the tenor of what we have been hearing from a number of constituents. I watched it as well on television for quite some time and saw people not just lighting cars on fire, but in a sustained and continued act of just hitting and kicking and dancing and hitting. And the televisions would flash over to a block away, and there were 300 officers, as you say, not moving in. How do you respond? What is the policy of the police department in that respect?
Well, basically, many times the cameras would pan to where our staging area was, which is several blocks from the incident. And so also when you get a camera angle looking at one set of circumstances, you don't see the full view of all the other things that are going on. Again, when that crowd that was in front of Staples moved in 3 different directions, it was our judgment to, again, react to what they were doing. And again, it was still a celebration until they began to attack the cars coming out of the parking lot. Moving those officers from 1 block away in a safe manner, getting the horses in place, it takes time because we did not pre-stage them, nor did we want the people coming out of the Staples Center to view that this was the end of the celebration. It was part of allowing people to celebrate.
Is it the policy now that as long as people aren't being hurt, if it's just property, that the property will go unconfronted?
No, the issue is that if we can deal with the property without endangering officers, without creating an escalation of the issue, we will address that property issue. But we're not.
Let me ask you, because I only have a moment, and Mrs. Glander keeps time pretty strictly. You mentioned that at the end over 600 officers responded. Do you have any idea what the cost to the city was of responding to that incident last night?
We have not figured that out. They would be.
What would be your rough guess? You know your budget pretty well. 600 officers.
Very difficult to say. This is an event that just ended a few hours ago, and we're still in the.
What's a one-day average pay for an officer for a day?
Well, if we use a judge as the Fiesta on Broadway, which is a full deployment, not just response, because many of these officers are on duty, some worked overtime, you're talking about several $100,000. But if you're just dealing with last night.
Could you get us a report to the council exactly of
Yes,
the
that'd
cost?
be a part
It'll
of
be
it.
relevant to another issue we're going to be dealing with in a moment.
Yeah.
Mr. Fewer.
You know, Mr. Wax asked about the costs. There is an ironic relationship between this item and the next item, item 40. And that is the whole point of item 40, and we'll talk about that later, is to talk about the perceptions that the world has of the city of Los Angeles. And Joel, in terms of costs, I think the costs in this situation are hard to calculate because, yeah, they're the raw costs associated with police time and so forth. But the costs associated with the juxtaposition of the image of the Lakers winning on the one hand and the vandalism, puts it gently, outside, is I think, going to last for a long time, is very hard for us to measure. And so what do we do about that? You know, I was among those disgusted last night. I was thoroughly disgusted. And here's where from my distance, it appeared things that were on the right track and a thing that was not on the right track. When the police moved in, they seemed very effective at dispersing crowds. There was, from all appearances, very little confrontation, very little violence. From what I understand from police records this morning, very few arrests. So when the police intervened, it was with great success. And I think that the performance of our firefighters really deserves a lot of praise. As was mentioned, a lot of heroism was demonstrated last night by firefighters who were just a few feet, in some cases, away from people who had caused the very problem the firefighters were there to abate. So those were good things. But here's what I still don't get. It was easy to anticipate that there could be such incidents. And the flaw, it seemed to me, in what took place last night from a police standpoint was in the pre-deployment of our officers. Because given the distance between where the vast majority of our officers were located and the Staples Center and the scenes where these very events occurred, there would be some time associated with getting from here to there. I understand, Chief, what you're saying. I understand the words that we chose not to be perceived as being too heavy-handed in trying to deter a celebration. But I think we have to be extremely clear in this city at distinguishing, on the one hand, a celebration, and on the other hand, acts of random violence that have nothing to do with celebrations or being a Laker fan. And that's what we saw last night, was the latter. Especially with the convention coming up. It struck me as I was yelling at the TV set last night, as most people in the city who were watching probably were, the pre-deployment of our officers is obviously essential. And I don't see anything inconsistent myself at a visible, stationary, passive police presence on the one hand, and the opportunity to celebrate on the other hand. I have very strong views about that. That once you were to intervene, I think the department deserves a lot of praise. But I don't think the situation should have been allowed to escalate to the extent it did last night. And the stain on the city from those images will last indefinitage.
Okay, thank you.
So that's my
Mr.
comment. I'd like a response, please.
Basically, I think that we can debate where they should have been pre-deployed. If we'd have staged them south and the event happened north, then we'd be criticized. We put them north and they went south. We have to react to where the people move and where the violations occur. We certainly know that people were there in large numbers to celebrate. It was a very small percentage of people that were there to do otherwise. And so we did not make the decision to come in and to take 90% of the people's celebration away, but when the small percentage of the people began to do illegal acts, we then brought officers in. I think the other issue that we are also concerned with is that, again, that we could put officers in many places, but we still have to react to what the individual law violators deal with. The other circumstances, which you did not see on television, is that there are multiple events going on at one time. And so you may have seen a car being burned, but you did not see a number of officers dealing with crowd contacts 2 blocks away to the east or west, nor did you see what was going on to the south of the facility. And so I think we were dealing with multiple simultaneous events. The most graphic had to deal with fire. Many of those fires, dealing with trash fires, burned themselves out. There was no need to send officers in and also fire resources to put out a dumpster fire when all it would have done is be a confrontation with people that were setting the fires. They were not going to set buildings afire. There were no structural fires. And those are the kinds of decisions we want field commanders to make, as to ensure that we're not putting people in more jeopardy when they take an action in the field.
Mr. Holden.
Oh, about 2 months ago, some people were demonstrating in Westwood, unemployed striking workers, and the police went in and they removed them without incidents. And they arrested them because they were obstructing the traffic and other people's rights. and then you call the police on the carpet. Why'd you do that? They manage crowd control. They move people and vehicles. Instead of complaining about what you read or somebody sent to you, which I think is idiotic, we should be applauding the police department for a job well done. It's not what did happen, what could have happened if they had not managed that rowdy crowd the way they did. I was there. They presupposed that someone was going to act stupid, and they in fact did. And the police department was prepared to deal with that issue. The police department was there before 9:30 when I left the Staples Center. And armed and control gear. Can you imagine it? Riot control gear. They had that on. They didn't have to go home and get it. They didn't have to go back to the police department and get it. They were there prepared for any ultimate outcome. And you're not even applauding them for it. You're talking about what somebody said to you and what you saw. I didn't like what I saw. But I got to tell you, I was trying to look for a telephone number to call the police chief and say, I applaud you for the way you handled it. It did not escalate the incident, and it could have been escalated. You have no idea what could have happened if they waded into that crowd with their clubs and their weapons drawn and start whipping on people. Because in order to stop them, you got to beat them up. Then today you'll be saying something else. Why did you go into that crowd when you know this was going to generate this kind of a confrontation and you're going to beat up on these people, these poor people who are burning automobiles? That's what you would have been saying. You know what it is? They can never make you all happy. Once again, you didn't have any senior lead officers out there with the riot gear on, did you? Well, I'm going to tell you, I'll give you some good news. They were out there where they belong. And something ought not to be political sometime. We got one police chief, he's good. We don't need 15 of them. God forbid that we should have 15 of them. I got to applaud you. You guys are well trained. You did a good job. It's not always perfect. But I can tell you what, if you'd done it any other way, the council would be here today saying, let's appoint another commission to study why the police chief waded into that crowd and heads rolled. People were jailed and trampled on as they did in Chicago. And I was there too. That's what you would have been saying. And the whole nation would have been in an uproar. But today it isn't. It was properly managed, a job well done, and this one councilman who applauds you for it. You're super qualified. Give him a big hand. He deserves it.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. Ms. Goldberg.
Actually, I share many of those views that were just spoken. I only had one real question. It seemed to me that fairly early on, it appeared to a lot of us that there was a lot of drinking going on outside. And I guess my question was, is there some possibility of having people be cited for open containers or something to give people the understanding we don't want them drinking out there? Because that's the only thing that came to my mind, other than, because I watched it all also, and I thought actually it was not overreaction. I thought it was very well done. I had really no problem when he actually moved, and I think he made good decisions about when to go in and when not to go in. So I didn't have any problem. But I do know that a lot of us were aware early on that there was a lot of drinking going on outside, and I suspect if you were to find out who actually did the vandalism and the things that we all found so reprehensible, that most of them were drunk. So I'm wondering if there's anything we can do to learn from this about, because there are going to be a lot of crowd control situations, how do we get the message to people that come and celebrate, but it's against the law to have open containers out there, and we don't want to have a hassle with you, but put them away, or we're going to cite you. And if they put them away, I mean, I saw photographs of people carrying cases of beer out there. So I was nervous about that from that point of view, and that's really the only question I have.
You know, we evaluated that and looked at the circumstances, and people were there. By the time the game was over, about 13,000. Some were drinking, and we made a tactical decision not to go in that crowd and start removing people out, because it was a very celebratory crowd.
I was talking much earlier in the event. I'm talking about like at the end of the first quarter, when it's clear that there's a lot of people bringing beer in.
Well, I think at the end of the first quarter, we're still dealing with about 5,000 people.
Yeah.
And so the tactical decision was not to go in and start removing people. We see that same reaction when we go into bars, when we start removing people
Right.
in large crowds. Generally, then you get the crowd turn on the
No,
officers.
I actually wasn't talking about removing them. I was talking about having people go in and remind them
Yeah.
that this is illegal to drink out here, could you put it away? You don't think that would have been a
Well,
useful
we
thing
will-
to do?
we will add that
Okay.
consideration
Well,
to
it's
our-
just a thought, because it seemed to me that if people hadn't been drunk, we would have maybe had a few of the little boards and newspapers burnt, but I don't think any of the rest of that, most of the rest of that would have happened. But it was clear to me, anyway, that we had a lot of alcohol involved out there.
We'll add that consideration
Okay.
as it
Well,
relates
it's
to the
just a
plan.
thought.
Thank you.
Mr. Pacheco.
Madam President, colleagues, I do want to echo what Ms. Goldberg said about the alcohol, in the sense that we should really do an evaluation as to how early were people drinking and what were your tactical options. But I do want to say this. I want to echo what my two prior speakers said about how you handle things. I'm not sure who on the council was actually there observing this and who actually watched it from TV, but I was there. I was stuck on Flower and 11th, which is just 1 block away from Staples Center, and I observed an intersection that was basically out of control. And I saw the riot police officers with their riot gear on to the right of me, and at no point, first of all, before they even engaged in their tactic, at no point did I feel threatened by anyone. They were celebrating primarily. There were a few people vandalizing, but it's not an easy job to then decide how you're going to control an intersection. And I saw them talking among themselves and figured out. And once they deployed to control the intersection, I thought they did a very orderly. They did it in an orderly manner. They controlled the traffic, and once they controlled the intersection, I was able to leave along with a bunch of other people. So what I observed was very different from what people were reporting to me who saw it from TV. And I think that's just a distinction between the power of the television and the selection and the hype and the dramatics that television wants to deliver to the living room versus those people who were there or who experienced it firsthand. So I would try to find as many people who were there to give you some critique and some observations. My observations were that things were being controlled in the areas that I was involved with. I can't comment on places that I couldn't see, which were approximately within 100 yards of where I was. But I think, interestingly enough, if you look back and you monitor, if you even do this, as I was leaving KABC, Mr. KABC was on the radio, and he was talking and having field reports from two radio reporters who were on the ground, who were reporting the police officers controlling and eliminating the escalation of violence or anything becoming violent. It was merely vandalism. And phoners were calling in about what they saw on TV, and there was this healthy debate between the radio reporters who were on the ground versus the television the image that was being portrayed. And I think those radio reporters who were on the field can give you some insight also as to what they observed and how the different mediums, the ability of a person to be firsthand on radio out there versus someone at a helicopter or someone at a booth or someone in a station removed from the site may give you some insight. But I do commend you on your work.
You know, one thing, Councilman, on that issue, we found the commentary on the television was much more balanced than the visuals. And so I think if you listen to what the commentary was on television, you did not find reporters giving you an imbalanced view, but when you saw the visuals, that's what people picked up on.
Mr. Burnson.
Yes, members of the council. I think what the chief just said is an important factor, because if you having a little experience in earthquake scenes, they always show you one building, the one that collapsed, and that's what you see is always the worst when you see it on visually. But what my message is a little different than my message is that we expect the department to step in and do a job and suppress this immediately. But on the other hand, when they do their job and have to use whatever force is necessary to do that, then all of a sudden they're at risk because of that, even to the point where officers are being individually sued, as well as the city. Unfortunately, you can't have it both ways. You can't have a department that has the responsibility of dealing with a riot. I'm not going to call it a civil unrest. It was a riot, and it was caused by a few individuals who went there probably specifically for the purpose of looting and creating hooliganism. Now, if you don't give them the ability to enforce, they used rubber bullets last night instead of live ammunitions. God forbid they'd had to use live ammunition. Your outcry today would have been the exact opposite of what you're getting. The exact opposite. And I'm telling you, you can't have it both ways. You either have to give them the authority to do their job, and they do their job. And I think that under the circumstances, with their hands tied, they did a great job last night. And you may not agree with that, but I personally do feel that there was no loss of life. Nobody was seriously injured. We did lose some property, but you know, the risk, what would they have had to do if they did enforce to the point where there wasn't any property damage? Probably some people would have either been killed or in the hospital or wounded or whatever the case might have been. So I think you've got a more important thing coming that's going to be even tougher, because you're going to have professional riot people here for the convention who specialize in going to scenes like they did in Seattle, who were in Chicago you saw some of the things they've done in the past. You cannot tie their hands and say that they don't have the ability to enforce. You got to give them the support they need. The same is true. Last night I listened to an interview with one of the firefighters who said that they literally were surrounded and they were hesitant about going in. That there were places where they actually couldn't get in until the police arrived to allow them to go in and extinguish some of the fires. So, you know, I think they all did a good job. You forget that these people are out there. It's easy for us to sit here and watch it on television and criticize. It's another thing to be out there. News commentators, I heard one commentator say they were pelted with stones. Just imagine, you're out there, you've got to give the department the ability to enforce and not criticize. I think under the circumstances, based with what the department has been faced with and what's going on now, they did a good job, and I want to commend them for it. Thank you.
Mr. Padilla.
Thank you, Madam President, colleagues. Madam President, if you can hold my time, I have a number of questions that I'd like to ask one at a time, and if you can hold my time during their response.
No, ask the questions.
Just quickly.
And then we'll hold your time while you get the
I know
answers.
there's been a number of questions specifically to why we didn't go in earlier, whether it was police or whether it was fire, and I think we've all come to the understanding that no major injuries, certainly no deaths, yet there was a question about why we didn't move in when some of the vehicles were first lit. If the fire chief can answer that question, because the response I saw on television last night was a very responsible one.
I had that same question when I contacted our people at the scene. Two issues, I think, set the stage for that. If you recall, prior to that, they had initiated the bonfires. And in that circumstance, in conjunction with the police department, a decision was made that the bonfires were essentially rubbish fires. Mm-hmm. And although some of the individuals were dancing in the fire, to get a heavy apparatus into there to extinguish those fires would have risked injury to the crowd that we were moving through. Once they initiated the fires in the cars, the problem was getting through that same crowd to get to that point. And the difficulty was getting there. Once we got there, and to answer Councilman Savornich's question, I talked to two of the captains this morning that were out there. They were surprised that the crowd actually was very friendly once they got on scene. They did take some plastic bottles thrown at them and some debris, but on the whole, it was a celebration, and it was more, you know, a game once they light the fire and we come put it out. And the unfortunate side, which I saw on TV in the coverage, was, I think, the terror that those people in the cars and in those areas and those that own those vehicles had to subject themselves to. The effort was on the part of the police department to clear that area ahead of time of all vehicles. If you recall, both of these were parked vehicles, and that's something I think we can do better on, is clearing the area, minimizing what's available there for this type of activity.
And as you mentioned, on the whole and for the most part, damage was very, very minimal. This was a celebration. And I don't know if either of you, Chief Amachi or Chief Parks, if you had any knowledge as to what happened in Chicago when the Bulls were winning their championships, and how some of the activity and loss from last night compares to what happened in Chicago. Can you comment on that?
I don't have the specifics, but I think if we follow Chicago, Dallas after the Super Bowl, in many instances, not only do you have significant citywide damage, you also had loss of life in many of those celebrations. And it's something that we certainly were aware of as we set our plan in motion for this event.
And so here's what I'd like to get across. Certainly there's a concern about what happened, how we can do our job better, but by no means do I want this to get blown out of proportion, which is, I think, what we're risking here by engaging in such a lengthy debate. Yes, there were some things we could do better. We have some things to learn, but for the most part, this was a celebration. Loss was very minimal, and for those who do have the concern, it's justifiable. We have the convention coming up in August, but that's not the only time we're going to have to showcase the city. The Convention Center and the Convention and Visitors Bureau is constantly trying to bring large events to venues here in the city of Los Angeles, and so I'll ask a point-blank question for both of you chiefs. Do we have anything to worry about? Are the preparations going well underway, not just for the convention in August, but for all the things we're trying to do here in the city of Los Angeles?
Our planning is going quite well. Wednesday, we believe we'll have an outstanding and very safe parade. We also have been working on the DNC planning for well over a year, and we feel as though all of the potential contingencies that we've worked out with the federal government, the CHP, and all the local law enforcement will put us in a position to have, again, a very safe DNC. But again, we will be reacting to those who choose to violate the law or try to stop the convention. And all of those contingency plans, we'll have to have field commanders out there making the appropriate decision, because no matter how great the plan is, we'll always have people that will come up with some nuance that we've not thought of, or they put out that we're not prepared at that moment. So we have to be very flexible, have adequate resource, and we feel we have all that in place.
Okay.
I would echo the same thing with the addition that I think you have to make a clear distinction between last night and the Democratic National Convention and what will happen there. The concern we have is we will be there in the Democratic National Convention to protect individuals and their freedom of speech rights. However, there will be demonstrators there, or what people are terming the anarchists, that are their objective is to stop the convention or prevent the convention. We'll still have challenges with those types of people in response and in mitigating the types of activities that they will be doing or preventing those activities. And those are things that we'll learn lessons from last night. And as Chief Parks mentioned, we have plans locally and regionally to deal with that.
So thank you, and just to conclude, again, loss was minimal, damage was minimal. We've seen much worse happen in much smaller cities, and for those who are concerned about future events in the city of Los Angeles, then they should probably look at tomorrow's parade as a true test of whether or not we can handle it.
Thank
I'm sure we'll be in good shape.
Ms. Mizikowski.
Thank you, Madam President. I think this has been a good and healthy discussion today, and I think the chiefs are hearing that one way or another you would have been here to report to us today, either as a consequence of did you not do enough in a timely manner, or did you overreact? And so, but let's look at this, look at the measured response, the plan that you put together, with some of the suggestions and critique, and your own self-critique, which I think will occur, and the question I think that Ms. Goldberg raised earlier, which is earlier response to drinking, and with, before the crowd is truly charged up because of the game itself, establishing that presence and establishing minimal control, but putting some rules out there makes sense. I think that's an issue, and I think the issue of presence. Where and when was the presence? Not necessarily in the riot gear, having that as a staging area, but other presence that would have just been visible. There's no question that folks react, seeing a black and white, seeing a police officer. The presence is there, the strength and what is imparted by that sense of control is there. So I think that would be healthy in a sense of critique. Members of the council, I would also like to mention that, as the chief has talked about, there has been long planned efforts to coordinate with all sorts of law enforcement and security forces for the DNC. And actually next week, Wednesday, I believe, the chief will be here to make a presentation to the council on the security preparations and what is going to be going on with DNC. So I think we can use last night as a lesson, as a real-time experience to look at what we are planning for during the convention, to see what worked well, what didn't work as well as we would have hoped, and what we might change. But I think the essence is, as you've described it, you had a large group of people there celebrating, happy, excited, enthusiastic, and you had a very small number who were there by way of alcohol or by way of whatever else, meant to go over the line and crossing that line, and where and how we react, where we react without putting officers and the public at danger as a consequence of that is a very, very hard decision that we ask you to make. We're going to be looking with you and at you in terms of how we're going to be informing those decisions for the DNC. But I appreciate the efforts that were put into planning, and now it's time for a little bit of critique to see what we can do better.
Mr. Hernandez, and then we're going to start on the second round.
You know, members of the council, one of the things that I think everybody's called a celebration is the fact that the city of Los Angeles has the National Basketball League champions. And most of the city was celebrating. I was at a concert, Mark Anthony, who everybody thinks is a phenomenal artist, he actually had to stop the concert at the Greek Theater so that we could listen to the last 5 seconds of the game because everybody was busy watching small TVs. And at the end of the concert, I mean, we celebrated with a concert, but at the end of the concert, we went out and we saw some other TVs and we saw the visuals of what was happening at the Staples Center. And so clearly most Angelenos wanted to celebrate and were proud of the city and its basketball team. I just want to make that comment because that's the environment in which we're in. And I think that a few individuals was a reflection of what we saw on those visuals. And Chief, part of my question is, whenever you see a police car or a news media van burning and people jumping on it and breaking windows and everything else, it's the kind of visual that is real. And it shows, at least at that time, that nothing's happening, a lack of control. But it was on videotape. Are we planning to pursue some of those individuals in terms of the crime and the loss of property?
That's all part of the investigation that goes on after these events. And certainly we don't want to make light of the fact that we lost 2 police cars, but I think when we made those decisions in the sense of what it would take to capture them and the amount of safety to those officers, that we believe is a proper decision. But part of that investigation and viewing video is an ongoing process for criminal investigations on all of these events.
And so that's something that's still ongoing, and any individual who participated in that activity should be aware of that.
That's true.
The second thing I wanted to ask is, when we talk about tomorrow's parade, and again, to me, it's a celebration that I think most Angelenos want to participate in. And many of them are going to be law-abiding citizens who want to make sure it's a celebration of the way we all would like to see. What do you anticipate doing a little bit different, if anything? And how is it that you can guarantee us that kind of celebration that you believe we deserve?
I think it's going to be 2 separate events. You're going to have it earlier in the day. Likelihood is you're going to have significantly less drinking. Also, you will have a parade that goes several blocks in which the bulk of the people will view the parade from a standing position. There'll be a smaller portion that will end up at the Staple lot to participate in the final celebration. So I think it's going to be a different event. We'll have significantly more people there in the sense of, because it covers a larger stretch of area. And I think, again, we will be in a position to give safety but not be overbearing. But in the same instance, if people begin to act out during that celebration, we'll have enough resources to remove them from that location so they do not disrupt the parade.
Again, and Chief, I want to be amongst the ranks of those who commend you for your job and the fire department for their job. Thank you.
All right, here we go. Second round. Mr. Fewer. All right. We have 2 more people who want to be heard a second time. Let's open the roll on the previous question. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
9 ayes, 3 noes.
That's been approved. And since there is no question,
It takes 10 unless you've spoken twice.
that's true. It does take 10 unless you've spoken twice. So, Mr. Fewer, do you want to speak? No, Mr. Holden wants to speak.
Well,
Go ahead.
in fact, I voted for the previous question, but...
Well, don't feel compelled, but...
Mr. Pacheco raised some interesting points because he was at the scene. And I mentioned earlier that I was also. And that when I...
So we all want to know how you guys got tickets.
It cost me $118 per ticket. And that was a cheap one.
Tiger Woods couldn't get a ticket. said so on the radio today.
Tiger Woods, no,
I'm sure he was willing to pay $118.
No, I had my request in a long time ago,
I
number
see.
one. And number two, I bought 2 tickets. I gave one to Tiger Woods.
I see. Go ahead.
But I must tell you that when I walked out of the Staples Center, the police says that it's not safe to go out into the street or get to your car. They escorted me along the perimeter of the Staples Center, and I got to a point where one officer who was in charge again said, no, you got to stay here. And I said, because they're celebrating and they're throwing things. And I said, well, can I walk through there at my own risk? He stepped aside and says, by all means. So I proceeded to walk along the perimeter of the building, and the people who were supposed to be making noise, they were just saying, oh, hiya, Councilman, hiya, Councilman, which I like that. They do that a lot. And then I got in my car. They had the street blocked off, but I got in my car and I started driving down the street, and the LA Times did an article on my new vehicle. Remember that they wrote one in the Navigator? So when they saw it coming, they said, here he comes. And then as I got by them, they said, there he is. And then they said, there he goes. And you know, I had no problem. They said, it's okay, Mr. Holden. I know they did burn some vehicles there, but they said there was no problem. Most people are having a good time. And the ones who were likely to have done that, the other says, no, that's the Councilman. So it's all right. Thank you, Mr. Chief. You did a good job. Both of you.
All right, Mr. Wax.
Wow, that's a tough act to follow, Mr. Holden.
Don't feel obliged.
No, I have some mixed thoughts about our discussion today. First, I certainly agree with Mr. Hernandez when he makes, I think, a clear point that, most people don't engage in that kind of behavior. Most people are good. Most people are decent. But crime is not about the most people who are good. It's about those who choose to act against the norm. And I have torn feelings about our discussion. One side of me says I can't agree with a lot of my colleagues who seem to accept unacceptable behavior. That somehow, if you just don't do it that much, it's not so bad. If you just, if you throw a brick in a window, it's okay as long as you don't hit someone. I don't go for that. I think that's behavior that's unconscionable and can't be tolerated. On the other hand, I have a lot of agreement with Mr. Bernsen and some of what Mr. Holden was saying about, are your hands tied? Do you feel your hands are tied in dealing with that kind of behavior? That's a policy that really needs to be discussed, not only now, but in depth. When I raised the points I raised, I think I expressed the disgust of a lot of people as well as myself, but it wasn't to be critical as much as to raise the question of, given the realities of today's times, are your hands tied in dealing with that kind of behavior? Have you been forced to accept a certain degree of unacceptable conduct because it's the only way to avoid something worse? Are there options? I think this is the kind of discussion, Chief, we need to engage in as we deal with law enforcement in an urban society in the present time, because those are very real issues. And I raised it really from the standpoint of giving us the opportunity, and certainly you, to discuss it in that broader context. Yeah. And perhaps you might have some comments.
I don't believe that our hands are tied. I think we have many more options to think about, and we also clearly want to make sure whatever tactics we use have safety first for everyone involved. And so we have a variety of ways to deal with things, and we do not want to go into any activity or unusual occurrence with only one mode of operation. We want to be able to go in, and if the crowd reacts a certain way, we want to deal with it in a certain way. If we think that the crime is occurring, we have to make judgments as to what the cost of making that one arrest is. We need to make judgments as to whether this property crime is worth going in 5,000 people to put out a fire that's not going to burn anything but the trash. Those are all the options that our training has given us, and we want our field commanders to have not a zero tolerance, which sometimes sends a message that you don't think about all the ramifications. We want them to think about all of those issues and make proper judgments on each occasion, as opposed to just going by script and saying that it's zero tolerance, we will do it the same way every time. That's why we train so much. That's why we put plans together, and that's why we talk strategies all the time. So field commanders feel they have a full breadth of options. And we also, in addition to pre-staging individuals, we then have the option of bringing resources from across the city on TAC alerts so that we do not over-deploy and misuse resources, but have access to them when we need them. And so we need that whole gamut of options to deal with these, and none of these situations are perfect. We will always have discussions of too quick, too slow, not enough, too many, and that's part of our refining our process. But we can never take the decision-making out of the hands of that field commander who we rely on to make those judgments at the time.
Okay, and just in final, Chief Amatri, congratulations to your personnel as well. I thought that they...
Thank you. And I would just add to that, Councilman, that I think the decision goes beyond Chief Parks and myself here, and it's really a decision and direction that comes here from the council. If you look at what happened last night, is both of our departments were in a response mode. We were responding to incidents. If the direction comes from the council and the mayor to be in a preventative mode, that takes an entirely different set of commitment of resources and conditions. I am concerned about the Democratic National Convention coming up. I don't think any of us, and I know Chief Parks is the same, we take it personally when we view on TV somebody having the terror of their car being vandalized and them being in it. And I think the efforts to prevent that with the upcoming Democratic National Convention has to be a collective decision that we're all working on. And as Chief Parks mentioned, we talked to our people this morning, not to second guess what they did, but to learn from the decisions they had to make and the circumstances they had to make those under, so that we can come up with tactics that hopefully will make those decisions less difficult when we're faced with these events in the future.
Thank you.
Ms. Goldberg.
I just really had to respond because I don't think anybody should be left with the impression that Mr. Wax just gave, that anybody said that this was okay. And I really have to take some umbrage with your remarks, Mr. Wax, about that. I think all of us were discussing as to what we thought the response was, and most of us thought the response was excellent and just had some questions about prevention. But whether we thought they were great or terrible, nobody thought that the reaction by some people to this situation was to, in my opinion, take advantage of it. I don't consider the people who would turn over cars fans of anything. What they do is they make people who are fans feel really bad. And that's the antithesis of fans. That's the anti-fan, as it were. I think everybody watched it in horror and felt terrible about it because we were all so jubilant. To have anybody snatch that away from us made us all angry. And I just wanted to say I didn't think it was an appropriate thing to say that any of us were minimizing what happened, though I do think it's appropriate to mention that in the context of other cities, we did better. But nobody's going to be happy until we don't have any of that, until celebration is all that we have. And we want to just be real clear about that, and I couldn't leave that just out there.
Okay, I think we're now done, unless you feel the need for another last word. I want to thank you both.
Thank you.
And you, gentlemen, for coming to report to us. We did, just for your information, we did schedule you first because we heard you were in the building, and we kept trying to get you in here, so I'm glad you finally made it.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Keep up the good work. There's plenty of it ahead of you. All right, our next item is, now let's just check this out here. We have two closed session items. We have item 40 and we have public comment. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, let's go on to item 40, what everybody's been waiting for.
Item number 40 is called special by Councilmember Wax.
Well, I'm going to ask, first of all, if it's all right with you, we have...
There's also another special.
I know there is. We have actually two other specials, I think. That's true. We have two specials as well. Let's do the two specials and just get this done with. Special number 2.
Special number 2, findings have been made by the city attorney.
It's the parade one.
Actually, since we were just talking about the Lakers, as we all know, the Lakers won the NBA championship last night. And this motion declares the parade and the parade and the
declares tomorrow
Lakers Day, and it declares it a special event, and it closes the streets to accommodate it, and therefore you need to make them.
And it also
findings.
recesses the council.
Oh, yes.
which is on the end there. All right. So first and obviously the need to act arose subsequent to the posting of the agenda since they didn't win it until last night. So we'll first open the roll on the findings, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Okay, now the matters before us, special number 2. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
All right, that is approved. Now, just so everybody understands, that means there will be no council meeting tomorrow. And tomorrow's scheduled agenda will kick over to Friday along with Friday's scheduled agenda, along with the presentations. So I just point that out to you. If anybody had plans for the afternoon, you might as well cancel them now. Special number 3.
Special number 3, Madam President, has to do with the residents of Hancock Park, Windsor Square, and Larchmont Heights and Los Feliz are seeking to explore the possibility of establishing an HPOZ, a Historic Preservation Overlay Zone. Planning Department has just advised that there are surplus funds that are available. Those funds will revert back unless the action is taken before the end of the year, and therefore the council needs to make the findings that the need to act arose after the posting of the agenda and that there's an immediate need to act.
Okay, open the roll on the findings. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
All right, the matter is before us. Mr. Fewer wishes to be heard.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Dean, if I could ask you to come to the front table for a moment. This is a special motion, and unfortunately, of course, the President is unable to be with us, and obviously all of us want to try to accommodate his goals, especially under these circumstances. But this motion comes before us as a special, requesting, as I read it, that we sequester $250,000 that planning suddenly finds that it has in surplus money and devote it to the possibility of exploring an historic preservation overlay zone in certain neighborhoods. And I just have a very hard time dealing with a potential $250,000 surplus for this specific purpose in this context, notwithstanding, I think, all of our desire to be as accommodating as possible to Mr. Ferraro right now. So, Mr. Deaton, do you have any recommendations for us given the special nature of the motion?
Well, I would suggest that you put it on the desk and have planning come down. I would, and then I think the next item will take a little while. And
no, planning is one about to keep you company.
When
in doubt, buy time often works. But
it was very handy they showed up.
Yeah.
Daniel Scott, City Planning Department. The money is currently in the contractual services account for the Community Plan Update Program. The total is approximately $250,000, and it will revert at the end of this fiscal year.
It would go to the reserve fund, essentially,
That's correct.
for any purpose in the city. And so our question, see, normally this is a good budget and finance question for us to have a committee deliberation on, but I guess, is there an absolute necessity, let me ask somebody, I'm not sure who knows the answer to this, that this be done literally today, as opposed to next week, which is still the month of June? For example, next Wednesday.
Because this is a special motion, it will continue 1 week till Tuesday.
No. This is introduced as a Rule 23. My question is, why doesn't it merit committee review, and what is the necessity of doing it today versus having that committee discussion?
My understanding is that because the money is surplus, that they wanted to encumber it for this year. The fact is, it's $250,000, whether it's in the reserve fund or in the planning department budget, either way.
Yeah, so we could do it next week.
No, the cutoff date is 22nd. This is the 22nd.
I'm being told by Mr. Ferraro's staff the cutoff date is the 22nd. I never heard of that cutoff date. Why is that relevant?
Well, the cutoff date is that if you're going to use this year's money, and you're going to use the surplus money in the planning department, then the 22nd is what the controller would like to have for your encumbrances. Two things about that. One is that I've known Mr. Tuttle to be flexible with it being asked, and I'm sure since he's in the audience, we're not here to demonstrate flexibility on some other issues, but nonetheless, but I'm sure on this issue he would be happy to, one. Two, my other point was if the $250,000 in fact does revert in the committee, you could come July 1st and come back with a $250,000 reserve fund and do that as well.
Yeah, colleagues,
Either way.
for what it's worth, I don't know enough to know whether this is the right way to spend $250,000 recently found dollars in the city. I certainly don't want to simply deep six the idea because we don't have those answers today. And I would urge us to find a way to have some committee deliberation on it in advance of making the decision simply to say no to it. I think we should have an opportunity to discuss it first. And Mr. Deaton suggests as an opportunity which really won't be lost if we were to have that deliberation in the near future, correct?
That's correct. And I'm sure with the President interested in it, we'll have an opportunity to revisit it.
Yes.
Okay.
So the upshot of that was you're suggesting what?
Some other people have pressed the
Put it off until next Tuesday.
But some
All
other
right, now
people
let me
pressed the
just
buttons.
let me just read you the schedule here. First of all, on Friday, we have one person arriving at 11 and somebody else leaving at noon. On Tuesday, we have one arriving at 10:30, two arriving at 11, and two others excused. And on Wednesday and Friday next week, we have two people excused. So,
I believe we can do it next week.
all right, so we were suggesting that we...
That we get a chance to
All
take
right,
a
we
look
have
at
a
it.
couple more council members who want to be heard before we go forward here, but you're suggesting we schedule it for next week?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Hernandez.
Yeah, members of the council, the only reason I wanted to rise in, when the motion first came to me to sign as a seconder, I had the same kinds of thoughts that Mr. Fuhr had. But then what I realized is that within the confines of the planning department, to get monies for the studies that they require in order to have a due process, and believe me, I've been trying to get it done for purposes of the adult entertainment businesses, and the planning department's having to do that study with their staff without additional funding, because we haven't been able to find it. I knew also that earlier we had set aside funding for the establishment of many HPOZs, one of them being in your district, one of them being in my district. And HPOZs is a planning process that takes time. And so this is contractual money, but it was already within the confines of planning for purposes of that kind of planning work. And so what they were asking us to do, before it reverted to the general fund, was to reallocate it for purposes of a study, for consulting services to start working on that HPOZ in that new potential corridor. And so I didn't see it as surplus money at this point, because I could have also been saying, this I could use for the study on adult entertainment, or I could use it for all these other things, and we haven't had money for those kinds of things. However, I did know that we did find money for HPOZs in other districts. And because of that process, I felt that this district deserved the same kind of consideration. And so, being that it wasn't declared surplus yet, I thought they could make that transfer, and I agreed to introduce the motion at this time. The planning department of all our departments is the department that has the least resources for the amount of work that they're required to do. And that's why I basically wanted to stand up and make my comments, because I know it's harder to get money into planning once it's not there.
Ms. Mizikowski.
I was going to rise just to support Mr. Fuhr's idea that this come over until next week. But in the meantime, if we schedule it for next week, Wednesday, and then ask that it go to planning on Tuesday, then in the Planning and Land Use Management Committee, we can look at the fact of, what Mr. Scott indicated was that this was money that it was set aside this year to do our community plan updates. Have we completed our community plan updates, and is this then truly surplus? If it is, then I think we should look at the fact of what HPOZs are, what work is being done with HPOZs, and figure out how we can best utilize this contractual money for HPOZs with those that are already in progress, with these priorities that are recommended in the motion. But I think we can have a better chance on Tuesday to assess that and look at those funds and put this together in a way that will really be most constructive in getting the best dollar, the best value for our dollar in planning by way of this contractual services. So let's recommend that we move this, continue this until Wednesday, have it in Plum on Tuesday if Mr. Bernstein's willing, and help bring it in then with the report on Wednesday.
Mr. Holden.
Madam President, did I hear that there's a deadline on whether or not this money should stay where it's at or be moved out?
there was a lot of flexibility.
Is there a
associated.
deadline, yes or no, Mr. Deaton?
Technically, yes.
I've just been informed the Controller's Office believes that the flexibility will be there if we need to make the transfer.
You trying to say Mr. Ferrara's office is telling us a deadline and there's not a deadline?
They were told the deadline. I'm just telling you that.
If they were, who told them there was a deadline?
I'm planning department.
Planning department. Well, then we have to live with what they were told.
There's a difference between the planning department calling the controller and the CLA calling the controller.
And the president of the council calling the controller.
Wait a minute. Don't leave there.
Okay.
It's the difference between, tell me what the difference is.
The answer.
You know? And you know what? Sometimes your requests are good, and sometimes your requests are not good at all. And that's why when you make a request, very often you end up with a 14-to-1 vote. And you know who give you the one no vote? Because you make a lot of bad, now. You make a lot of bad requests. I mean, they can call me Bernardi or, Holden Bernardi, whatever. But the fact of the matter is that, for you to sit there and tell the members of the council and the public that you have that kind of influence is, you don't want to do that, do you? But again.
No, let me explain.
Yeah, I think you should.
Okay. In the normal process, when you have hundreds and hundreds of requests, it is totally rational for the controller to set up a series of deadlines for those to be met.
My time is running, Madam President.
Okay.
Would you hold it, please? Go ahead, let him talk.
How much do you need, Mr. Holden?
I need about 45 seconds.
Okay, I'll hold it till when we get to 45 seconds. Go ahead.
However, bureaucracies and systems can also have adjustments and have some flexibility depending on the issue. And so when there is a particular appropriation, this is not uncommon for the controller to be flexible on a few items, but as a rule of thumb, that's not a good idea. And all I'm saying is that if it reaches a certain level of importance, then the flexibility will be there, and I think that is not only appropriate to do otherwise would be inefficient.
Would you like to hear from the controller while I'm holding your time?
Yes.
I have had nothing to do particularly with who called, with all due respect to my friend Mr. Deaton. Instead, what happened is there was a member of council staff who was here. I asked her, the question came up. I happened to be sitting here for another item. The matter came up. Our office was mentioned. I asked that the chief deputy, is now Mr. Lynch, who took Tony Miera's place, to give briefly a digest of what was going on. Did we have flexibility? Because there had been a representation made here 10 minutes ago that there might be flexibility, and I understand that issue was, I understood sitting here that issue was material as to whether or not you needed to consider something that Mr. Ferraro had before you. I do not know the substance of what it is you had because I was sitting here. I got assurances from my staff that we would have flexibility on this particular matter. Beyond that, I don't know the details. It had nothing to do particularly with who called, except for the fact that the call was generated by me sitting here asking someone to call on my behalf. That's as far as I know the details. And I think we can be helpful to you on this.
Okay,
Thank you.
Mr. Holden, did you wish to finish?
The only reason why I had a concern is because you have the president of the council, you have someone calling on his behalf, he gets one answer, and then you have the CLA making a phone call, and he overrides the president of the council.
No, that's not what happened.
Well, that's
the question was whether he overrode the planning department.
No, well, the planning department, this was the president of the council, the one who was seeking the information. And so that was my concern. I mean, Mr. Ferrara is probably watching this on television now. He's going to remember what's going on. He got Channel 35 where he's at. So, Mr. Deaton, you can start to come talk to me. I'll try and decide if I want to give you an extra vote. Not just on this, but you know what I mean.
Okay, can we go on now? Ms. Goldberg.
I don't care whether we do this now or later, and I think we should do this. But I do think the issue that's being raised is a process one. All of us have planning area needs. Some of us have 2 community plans that are open, and we keep trying to find money for how to finish our community plans. The Echo Park Silver Lake one is open, and so is Hollywood's in my district. So it's not like there aren't planning needs, and I think the process question is an appropriate one. I don't have any problem passing this today or passing it next week, but I do think the process questions are good ones, because it does seem appropriate to raise the idea that if there were money left in this account, that lots of folks who have projects that planning needs to do in terms of studies should have been notified of it, and in a timely manner, and we could have tried to figure out a method of determining how best to use it, whether it's this versus something else. That, of course, was circumvented, and that is a problem. But in this particular instance, on this particular one, I could vote for it today, I could vote for it next week.
Well, you're going to have a choice in a moment. Now, did somebody move to continue this to next week?
Planning committee, so we
All
can
right.
compare the substance.
And Mr. Burnson, will you be able to take this into planning committee next week? Okay. In that case, is there any... All right. Well, I've just talked to Mr. Ferraro's office, and as long as they feel comfortable that we're going to get around to giving them the money...
We're fine. We would like planning to give an explanation in committee because they gave us
Okay,
wrong information.
good. All right, so we're going to continue that until next Wednesday, and we're going to ask planning to come to the Plum Committee on Tuesday, and with any luck, this will all be taken care of. So that item is continued. And I believe now, the moment you have all been waiting for, we're up to item 40. We do have, I believe, 9 people so far who've asked to speak, roughly evenly split. I'm going to suggest, and 3 council members during the second it took me to say that, and I'm sure there will be more, but let's begin, I think, with a report. Why don't you announce the item, and then we're going to ask the host committee to report to us.
Item number 40 is a motion for Ferraro Padilla to the transfer of funds for costs associated with the 2000 Democratic National Convention. Mr. Wax called this matter special.
Yes, he did, and I will certainly call on him first, but I think we, come up to the table. I think we should hear first from the representatives of the committee. Take your pick, either table or both. And I think you can anticipate that the council will want to hear what the money is for and why it is that, having been promised we wouldn't have to put it up, we're now being asked to do so. And with that, it's yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to address the council this morning. With just 53 days to go before the Democratic National Convention comes to Los Angeles, we are at a pivotal point in our planning. We are about to welcome 35,000 people to the convention. 15,000 of them will be reporters, not only from the national press, but internationally as well. It's a great opportunity to show that we are a city of champions.
Excuse me, this may surprise you, but we need your name on the tape.
Oh, I'm sorry. Noelia Rodriguez, President and CEO of LA Convention 2000. Okay, so as we move forward, I want to report to the City Council that we have worked very hard. We have a tremendous staff made up of dedicated Angelinos who are focused every day on making this the best convention in the history of political conventions. This is the first time since 1960, when President Kennedy was nominated as a Democratic candidate, that a convention is being held in the great city of Angels. And back to back from Chicago, the second time in a row that a convention is being held in the host city of the basketball national champions. So we're very proud of that moment. We expect that the city will stand to gain about $135 million in economic revenue as a result of the Democratic National Convention. And that's money that will be used directly by working families, people who are part of the workforce of Los Angeles who will benefit from the economic activity, restaurants, shops, transportation, other public services and retail services that are available in our city. And as we approach the 50-day mark, before the countdown of the convention, we find ourselves in need of an additional $4 million to help us fulfill our contractual obligations. The contractual obligations which we now face, where we will have about a $5 million payment due on July the 1st, primarily will be used for the build-out of Staples Center for the actual convention setting itself and for the production of the convention program itself. We are working earnestly with Terry McAuliffe, who just recently was named chairman of the Democratic National Convention Committee. With the DNCC's expanded partnership, we now turn to the City of Los Angeles for an expanded partnership through the City of Los Angeles. I assure you, this is not an easy ask to make because we are very well aware of the private and public partnership that was the genesis of the Democratic National Convention bid. However, it is a responsible thing to do. We have to make sure that we explore all options possible to assure the people of Los Angeles and the Democrats who are visiting our city that we have a successful convention. And we ask you to help us be a part of this expanded effort and help us make sure that by including all Angelenos, not only as 5,000 volunteers, which we are happily on the way to recruiting, but also in our community events. I'd also like to note that we're very proud of the fact that our diversity in our city is what got us the convention to begin with. And our theme for the convention week is the Faces of Los Angeles, and we're going to be showcasing the diverse faces and the diverse cultures and the diverse communities that make up the great city of Angels throughout convention week. And we're working very closely with many communities to make that all happen, especially with school children throughout Los Angeles. A couple of weeks ago when we unveiled our volunteer center at 7th and Fig, I had the opportunity to meet a volunteer who was also a volunteer during the 1960 convention, Ellen Jacobs. And Ellen Jacobs speaks very fondly of her experience 40 years ago as a volunteer, as a part of Los Angeles' history when we were then the new frontier, as we are again the new frontier in the 21st century. And our goal is to make this a positive experience for all of the Ellen Jacobs of Los Angeles who want to volunteer and be ambassadors and work with the City Council, work with the city family, work with the host committee and the DNCC to make this a successful convention. So I humbly ask for your consideration for a $4 million grant to the host committee, commitment to the host committee, I should say, to help us ensure that we do have the best convention in the history of political conventions, to help us show that Los Angeles is indeed the capital city of the 21st century because of our unity, because of our solidarity, because of our diversity. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, just sit tight. I'm going to ask you to stay there because I know that we're going to have a number of questions. Mr. Tuttle wants to debate you on this, and I'm going to first, before I call on you, Mr. Tuttle, I want to have the council make some determinations here about how we want to go forward. I have so far 5 council members who wish to speak. I will also want to say something at some point, and I feel sure that there will be more of us as well. We also have a public hearing and a number of people who wish to be heard. And so I'm going to ask for your guidance about how you want to do this. Do you want to have the public hearing before we have the council debate? Mr. Wax had called this special, so just...
Chair, whatever way you think it's best run, as long as we keep it within, so we're all here and can
Yes,
debate
well,
it.
that's part of my concern. All right, if it's agreeable to the members of the council, then I'm going to start with the public hearing and call on Mr. Tuttle as the first speaker. And I will ask all of you, let's try to run this. Uh-oh, the stack got bigger since I looked at it last. We do want to be sure that we have the opportunity to close this discussion. So I'm going to ask you, Mr. Tuttle, and everyone else who's going to speak, if you would make your points as succinctly as possible. And I will call the opponents, the no speakers have indicated they're against the proposal first, then those who are for it. And then we'll go into the council debate. And yeah, make it 10 minutes each side, and we'll hope that it won't take that long. Okay, are we ready? Go. Mr. Tuttle.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the council. As you know, I strongly recommend against the city giving additional funds for the Democratic National Convention Host Committee. And I oppose this move for 2 reasons, which I'd like to briefly highlight. The first is that this request, ladies and gentlemen, is a bait and switch. Los Angeles had a deal with the convention that the convention planners are now trying to go back on. The original agreement was that the city would provide about $7 million worth of direct services, police, traffic, direction, and so on, and the convention would not ask for a direct subsidy. The city of Los Angeles should not send a message that those who do business with the city can get a project far enough along, the city will capitulate to any additional demands. And the second is that the city should not allow itself to be held hostage by warnings that handing over this money is necessary to stop and to avoid embarrassment. If additional funds are truly needed, there are other appropriate sources. The Democratic National Committee, perhaps, or further fundraising by the host committee as originally planned, or if the need is urgent, if there's a time certain here, a loan, a bridge loan to cover immediate costs that are guaranteed by host committee members or by the Democratic National Committee. I speak to you as someone who's been an active Democrat for over 45 years. I've backed candidates, raised money, wore out about wore out a few pairs
But you
of shoes.
still only get 20 more seconds because I want to let the other people speak.
Wore out a few pairs of shoes walking for Democratic candidates. But this is not what the Democratic Party or the host committee working with the party should be about. Not going for public taxpayers' money, but rather with the White House in hand, with the leadership of the state in hand, should go and raise this money from private sources. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure they'd like to have the White House in hand. All right. Next, Mr. Tom Francis, to be followed by Ms. Leaning, Jane Scott, Daniel Schwartz, Peter Baxter. It says 40. It says item number 40. Go ahead.
Good
Make
afternoon,
it brief.
Councilwoman Pro Tem Galanter and council members. First thing I wanted to say was I just think it would be better if we mixed the people that are for this proposal and against this proposal, as opposed to letting all the people that are promoting this idea to all be at the end.
Why don't you tell us why you're opposed to it?
Anyway, I would ask you to take a moment to think about other things that $4 million could do for the city. For example, contribute it to social programs or environmental programs. It could be put towards things that could have matching funds from the federal government, could be leveraged. I just really don't understand how we could even consider something this ludicrous. It's really important that we give to things that are for the community. I think the Democratic National Convention can take care of itself, and I don't think it should be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Leaning, followed by Ms. Scott.
Ladies, Sunland Tahunga. Well, is it working or isn't it?
Yeah, it's
I guess
on.
it is. Okay.
It's okay.
Do not, I repeat, do not concern yourselves with what other people in the country think of you, or think of Los Angeles, let's say. Concern yourself only and foremost with what your constituents think of you. There is a very popular program on television for about a month now called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? I'm borrowing with a slight variation the game's title and asking who wants to bankrupt Los Angeles. $6 million to the Democratic Party convention. Who can believe that? The taxpayers have more than enough on their plates. We will have to pay for the Rampart scandal and the numerous other things for which other speakers have already mentioned that the citizens need. There are billionaires affiliated with the Democratic Convention to whom $6 million is pocket change. Let them pay for it. Who wants to bankrupt Los Angeles? I would say the LA City Council. Yes, that is my final answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Scott, followed by Daniel Schwartz, and I seem to have left one out, Lena Platt or Mary Lyons, and then Peter Baxter.
I agree with Mr. Tuttle, the controller. There are many services in my community alone, basic city services, which are not being taken care of. Picking up trash on the streets and sidewalks, loitering, the drunken drinking in the streets and parks. Even in addition to this, to use tax monies to fund a private venture, which the DNC is not only unconstitutional, it is fraud on the part of the city council if they go ahead with this project. I agree with Mr. Tuttle. There are many billionaires and millionaires who are very, very generous with their monies, and we have quite a few out in Malibu and Hollywood who I'm sure would be more than happy to fund one of their pet projects. Do not allow tax money to go to the DNC. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schwartz, followed by Lena Platt or Mary Lyons, and then Peter Baxter.
I'm not just here to air a grievance. I'm here to try to convince you.
It's really nice to find out that there's $4 million in a reserve fund that could be spent on things in Los Angeles. My daughter attends a public school in LA that has absolutely no playground facilities. The parents of the school, in cash and in-kind contributions, raised $25,000 of it. We get an additional $25,000 from the Kirk and Aileen Douglas Foundation. So we've raised $50,000 to build a playground at this what's considered one of the most exceptional public schools in LA. That's, if you consider the matching funds, $4 million is 160 playgrounds for the future voters of Los Angeles. You guys might want to think about that before you give this money away.
Thank you. Ms. Platt or Ms. Lyons? You're not Ms. Platt or Ms. Lyons.
No, Dave Kilburn, and they had to leave for an appointment, so I'm speaking for them. I'm
All
with
right,
the
and before you leave, can we just get your name on here?
Yes. The City of LA should give no money to the Democratic Convention until Joe Andrew and the Democratic National Committee cease ripping up the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the Constitution in refusing to seat delegates, duly elected delegates of Democratic presidential candidate Lyndon LaRouche. In Arkansas, for example, where LaRouche got 22% of the vote, Joe Andrew and the state party acting for Al Gore took the delegates that LaRouche won in violation of Arkansas state law and gave them to Gore. These people believe that the party is their private club, and this means going back to Jim Crow. The City of LA cannot participate in such racist and fascist actions. I have copies of a press release on this that I'd like to leave for the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baxter.
Madam Chair, members of your Honourable Council, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Peter Baxter and I live at 1319 Ingram Street in Los Angeles. I'd like, Madam Chair, to wish President Ferraro a speedy recovery and return. It is respectfully submitted that the Constitution of California at Article 16, Section 6 reads in part thus, where I say ... I'm saving that out for brevity. The legislature shall have no power to give or to lend or to authorize the giving or lending of the credit of the state or of any county, city ... nor shall it have the power to make any gift or authorize the making of any gift of any public money or thing of value ... That's the end of that quotation. The Constitution of the United States at Article 6 at the third paragraph reads in part thus, ... all executive and judicial officers ... shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution ... End of quotation. On June 2nd, 2000, the Public Library of this city issued a statement in part as follows, ... We could find no sources that discuss why members of the Electoral College do not have to take an oath of office ... End of quotation. It is my respectful submission that making a gift of public money to the Democratic National Convention Committee is against the law of the Constitution of California, and supporting their activities in competition with a captive, non-sworn electoral college is also against the law on this occasion of the Constitution of the United States, all of which is respectfully submitted. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Baxter. That concludes the people. I don't have a card for you.
I came here solely for this item.
I have a card for you on general comments, which I haven't gotten to yet. That was the opponents.
Number 40.
Just hold on. Just hold on a second. We have some other people to be heard from still. All right. Starting our second 5 minutes here, Candido Maya. I think that's what that says. 10 minutes, yeah. Followed by Roberta Lewis, Queenie Ruth Summers, and then Brian Hutchings.
Thank you, Madam President, council members. You know, in the city of Los Angeles, we have the best and worst of things, and we saw that last night at the Staples Center. And the one thing, and I'm a Republican, but what I want to see with the Democratic Convention here in 2000, I want that to be the best that the world's ever seen. Now, people are complaining that we're going to be taking dollars that can be used for other for services. That's always going to happen. But if I take $10 and I keep it in my pocket, it's going to take $10. It's going to stay $10. But if I take that $10 and I invest it, I'm going to have growth. And that's what we're doing with this convention. The people that are going to benefit are the citizens of Los Angeles, the residents of Los Angeles. So I support giving the money for the convention. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lewis.
My name is Roberta Lewis. Do I have to state where I live?
No, that's okay. We have it. Go ahead.
I came here expressly as a citizen, as a resident of Los Angeles, to speak in favor of supporting the Democratic National Convention. We live in a city where I doubt any of you would disagree with me, image is everything. That's what people think of when they think of Los Angeles, whether it's Hollywood, whether it's Malibu, even though that's not part of the city, but the beaches, you know what I'm talking about as far as image. $4 million is a lot of money, and I definitely recognize that it can be used for many things. This convention will be bringing in a lot of revenue and will also serve as an advertisement for Los Angeles. Images that have been as recent as last night weren't too favorable. The pitiful New Year's Eve display that was put on, that was criticized all over the world, could really use a shot in the arm for this city. So I definitely hope that you agree and that you definitely support this project.